Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you guys. My name is Megan Finnerty, and hopefully you recognize me as part of the Storytellers brand studio with USA Today and Gannett. But I am here tonight because we are partnering, as you guys know, with brand storytelling, because we know that it is important to stay connected, even though right now, frankly, it feels a little awkward and unlikely for us to be getting together in person. You know, this is the second of our summer happy hours where we are working with members of the brand storytelling family to bring you true first person stories about work. Tonight's theme is called We Met at Work, and it's stories of relationships, romantic and otherwise, like friendships too, that have changed our lives and made our lives better. And before we get into the show, I want to bring up my collaborator at Brand Storytelling, Jordan Kelly, who's going to help us get into things. Hi, Jordan.
Hi, Megan. Thank you so
Hi.
much. And hello, everyone who's tuned in. Just wanted to say thank you all for being here. As Megan said, this can be a difficult moment as we're all separated, but we're doing our best to keep the brand storytelling community together by bringing you shows like this one. So tonight we have some excellent storytellers, and I can't wait for you to hear from them. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Jordan. Well, we super appreciate it. Jordan's put out some call outs to you guys via newsletters and on social media, and we've asked for volunteers, and we have gotten them. So without further ado, I am super excited to introduce three of our storytellers this evening. We have Ferris. She's Senior Manager of Content Strategy at Expedia. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks so much
for
for
having
being
me.
here.
Excited to be here.
Awesome. Bernice Veloz. You guys might recognize her as the 2019 Ad Club of New York Fellow, 2020 Adweek Executive Mentorship Mentee. She is a multicultural marketing and media executive. She does all kinds of cool things, but also you're going to hear so much more about her in just a second. Hi, Bernice.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Megan.
Hi. Rounding out our show tonight is Robin Dutra. Robin is here. She's the Vice President of Creative North America at the Estee Lauder Companies Incorporated. And not only does she have an incredible sense of style, but she can get you 50% off all kinds of cool swag. Right? Robin didn't promise any of that for you guys tonight. I'm just telling you. Just message her on LinkedIn later. I'm kidding. Well, thank you all three for being here this evening. So before we get into the show, I want to prepare you a tiny bit emotionally, not only because I'm intense, but because it's my job. No, I'm kidding. So the deal with oral storytelling, as you know, if you've ever been to Elevate or to Sundance and you've seen us do these live shows, the key is it's not a TED Talk. It's not Toastmasters. It's not a how-to, an inspirational speech. It's not an educational lecture or a slideshow. It's like none of those things. Instead, we try to bring to the stage and tonight the screen the same thing you love about meeting people at the bar. It's a visit. It's where you get to open your heart and your mind and you pay attention to someone you care about because you're genuinely curious. You want to get to know them better. We know that our industry is built on storytelling, and we also know that storytelling is how we get to know people more deeply. What are their values? What are they all about? Who are they really? Why does this matter for brand storytelling in particular? It matters because what all the founders of brand storytelling are always talking about is we want to work with people who we have things in common with, who are aligned on our values, not just because we know you're super talented or because you can drive to ROI, totally, but you can make a deck that shows us that. These stories are really here to help us connect as a community. So at the end of this, we hope that you will understand some of these are going to be polished and professional. Some are going to be casual and conversational. We really want our storytellers to be themselves on stage. Are you guys ready to bring up our storyteller? Probably, I'm kidding. You guys are it's quiet. I can't hear you. All right, we are excited to bring up Bernice is opening the show.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Megan, for the wonderful introduction. All right, so here we go. I love marketing and advertising. It's challenging but rewarding work. In this industry, you often spend more time at work than we do at home. At minimum, you should tolerate each other when you're going to spend about 40 plus hours a week with your coworkers. It's certainly not your typical 9-to-5 career where you leave work behind when you clock out. This is a look at colleagues who became my family throughout the years. My favorite job thus far has been at Univision. I grew up watching Univision programming, so it was the first place where I felt like I had truly made it. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that Juan, the team's executive assistant, would become one of my best friends. I first met Juan through email when he was helping the hiring manager schedule interviews, including mine. His emails were very professional and straightforward. I thought to myself, this man must be no joke. My first day in the office, I found out he's Dominican, just like me. And we started talking in Spanish and Dominican slang, like, que lo que, manita. Once I heard the que lo que, I was like, de lo mío. And our friendship took off from there. He's loving, he's charming, funny, and very wild. Definitely someone that I love. And I couldn't tell that from his initial emails. On my first day at work as a marketing coordinator, my supervisor sat me next to Andrea, the sweet and quiet sales coordinator. We'd be working closely together, so it made sense to have her show me the ropes. Within days, she tells me that her boyfriend, Mikey, now her husband, grew up around the corner from my house. Well, as it would turn out, not only did Mikey live near me, but our families actually knew each other. From there, our friendship took off. We blossomed to besties, as we call each other. I was even a bridesmaid at their wedding. Maggie was another executive assistant, and she was really close friends with both Juan and Andrea. Having been there a few years before I came along, she had formed a really close friendship with both of them. I was a bit more cautious and reserved when we met. I was a new girl, and I was going to have to earn her trust a little bit more, which was fine by me. She gradually opens up, and since then, we formed our infamous Booties group. We all attended Maggie's destination wedding in the Dominican Republic, and later, when she had a baby Mimi, we were all there as well. She's one of my closest friends and someone I play Inspector Gadget with, and we peruse my crush's Instagram page to confirm whether he's single or not, which, to be clear, guys, we're still trying to figure that out. At the end of the day, it was really hard to leave that job and those friends, but we vowed to always stay in touch and have held on to that promise to this day. In fact, Andrea, baby Grayson, Maggie, and baby Mimi were just visiting me last week. Pandemic and all, the love is super real. Now let's talk about Eric, or E-Money as I call him. We met for the first time in LA at the BET Awards in 2014. I had just taken a long 5-hour flight from New York City to LA, so as you can imagine, I was really exhausted, but I had to meet the Time Warner Cable rep that was going to give me tickets for the fun and exciting weekend ahead. That night, we bonded over drinks at LA Live's The Conga Room. There was a private opening night concert with MC Light and a bunch of celebrities. At one point, I actually turned around and we were both dancing next to MC Hammer, which is a Bernice fun fact now and one of my claim to fame. We had a really incredible trip. The awards were amazing and Eric was such a wonderful host. When I got back to the city, I actually mailed him a handwritten thank you note, which I know he still has posted in his home office to this date. Since then, we've built a really strong friendship beyond just work. He's truly my brother from another mother and a travel buddy. We've actually traveled to New York, LA, San Francisco, Miami, Chicago, Portland, Seattle, and the Dominican Republic. I knew I'd be friends forever with Genaro, as my family lovingly calls him, when we were able to dance the night away and see the sunrise with my cousins in the Dominican Republic. We were at the Malecón overlooking the Caribbean Sea. Those are memories that are going to last a lifetime. Blue's Clues, Rachel and Randy. They're my latest work family. We met while working at Blue 449, hence Blue's Clues. The agency was actually going through some really difficult structural and organizational changes. Admittedly, I was actually having a difficult time adjusting to the new team structure. We were a small team of 4 that had suddenly expanded to a team of about 8 or 9, and we had just moved to another floor in the ceiling in the building, so I had lost my infamous seat in the corner where I can come in late and no one could see me. In my previous role at Univision, I had stability, and in that, I had found my family with Booties. While I enjoyed my new team, the camaraderie and the friendship just wasn't there. We all sat around each other. My desk was in the corner next to the window facing a wall, which actually, in hindsight, says a lot about my state of mind at the time. Rachel and I sat back to back, and Randy sat in front of Rachel facing her. We all sat one right after the other. It had been a few weeks since they had joined our team, and although I'm usually very personable and chatty, I was rather quiet and kept to myself during those days. Randy, on the other hand, has always been chatty. I recall one day she was telling Rachel a funny story that I overheard. I laughed and I chimed in as well. From there, we got to know each other and developed a really close friendship despite our differences. They are my confidants and my support system. Our Blue Schools group chat always has fun and exciting content. During this time, while I've been laid off, they actually send me jobs to look at almost every day, every other day, I would say. During this time, while I've been laid off, they send me jobs. Randy even got me to join the Ladies Get Paid networking group. And Rachel has introduced me to just about everyone that she knows in the industry that is currently hiring. A few months ago, we actually even did a group FaceTime where we were all cooking different meals at the same time, chatting about our love life. Randy about her new Bumble date, and Rachel about her new boyfriend. We laugh and we cry together. It's a really beautiful thing. In conclusion, these are times of divisiveness and racial tension, and it's important to keep our humanity top of mind. I, for one, found sisterhood and brotherhood with all of these people at work from different backgrounds. I'm Dominican and Christian. Juan and Maggie are also Dominican. Andrea is Ecuadorian. Eric is Black. Rachel and Randy are both white Jewish women. I have a special and unique friendship with each of them. And, it's important to note that although we've all moved on from those jobs, in fact, Eric actually moved to another city. He's no longer in New York City like me. He's in Chicago. You don't have to continue working with people to maintain your friendships and your relationships with them. That said, I am currently looking for my new colleagues that become family. Thank you for your time.
Bernice, thank you so much for your story. I love the idea of just like how open you are to like, God, making friends, making connections, and really turning your coworkers into meaningful long-term relationships. Like I feel like everyone watching is like, I want to work with Bernice.
I hope so.
I know, you're right. But I so appreciate that, especially because, now I'm a little bit older than you, and I can honestly say that so many of my friends are people who I used to work with, and it's one of the great joys of our lives. So Bernice, thank you for modeling such friendly, open-minded, and collegial behavior to kick off our show.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, audience, what you guys should know is so many of us, it turns out we're so impressed with Bernice after our practice session that we did email her and ask her if she wanted to come work with us. So we hope you're impressed with her too. Feel free to reach out to her. She's on LinkedIn and she's got a great profile. Without further ado, I'm excited to bring up Lee Ferris. Lee's here to talk to us about a night out on the town that changed her life.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. I love to have the opportunity to make personal connections in a professional setting. It just really helps us to get to know each other. And this was the perfect week for Jordan to reach out to me and ask me if I wanted to participate in this particular theme, because August 26th is a pretty important day in my life, and it directly ties to this story. So to start the story, I want to go back to the very first day where I believe this story really starts. And that's 17 years ago in the summer of 2003. I was working as a special projects producer at a TV station in Seattle, and meant I was working on live shows and series and things like that. And we were in the process of producing a live show from the San Juan Islands. So on this one particular day, we were getting ready to go on a location scout, and we were going to be taking a float plane. We were going to be outside most of the day. And, summers in Seattle can be a little bit touchy in terms of the weather. And so as we were headed out the door, I realized, oh, shoot, I don't have a jacket. What if it gets cold? So what am I going to do? I was at the station. So I just immediately thought about, where can I get a jacket? And the first person I thought of was this guy named Keith, who was one of the photogs, as they call them in the business. So a cameraman, editor that worked at the station. And he and I had been working together a bit recently. So I ran over to him and I said, hey, could I borrow your jacket? And he was like, sure. Why I wanted to borrow Keith's jacket, I don't know. But looking back now, I want to say that there was maybe some sort of spark or something between the two of us that I felt comfortable enough to ask him and want to borrow his jacket for the day. And so maybe, who knows? Skip ahead a couple of months to November. And at that time, Keith and I, over the last couple months, had been working together quite a bit. We had been working on this special series, a 13-part series. And at that time, I was on the board of a nonprofit, and we were preparing for our annual auction. And I, as a board member, was responsible for filling a table of 10. So I was thinking, who could I invite? Wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit. And because Keith and I had been working together so much, I thought, oh, why don't I go ahead and invite Keith to come sit at my table with his girlfriend? Like I said, mixing that personal and professional, getting to know people better. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get to know him and his girlfriend a little bit better. So I invited him. He said yes. And that was just a couple weeks away. So then a couple weeks later, I'm at work. Keith and I are out on a shoot. It's the day before the auction. And he says to me, he says, oh, I don't have a shirt for tomorrow. I could use a new shirt. What would you think about if we stopped at J. Crew, since we're downtown, and I could look real quick while we're on our lunch break? And I thought, sure, no problem, of course. So we go in, we're walking around J. Crew. He's getting some help from the salesperson. They've narrowed it down to a couple shirts. And the saleswoman turns to me and she says, well, what does your girlfriend think? And I was like, girlfriend? What girlfriend? Not in a kind of ew sort of way, but more of a, that's weird. Why would she think I'm his girlfriend? Because what I hadn't mentioned up until this point is that I also was in a relationship. And so it just seemed kind of odd for her to ask that, like, what kind of vibe were we giving off? And so Keith and I just kind of looked at each other like, okay, yeah, girlfriend, boyfriend. Again, these little sparks were kind of starting to happen and maybe getting us to think about each other in a little bit different way. You can kind of see where this is going. So the next day at the auction in the evening, I'm in the hotel lobby waiting to welcome my guests. And I see Keith and his girlfriend walk up in the shirt from J. Crew. And I say to myself, oh, he cleans up pretty good. And so we all join at the table, and included in that table is my now ex, who was at the table with us. And he showed up a little bit late. So I'll tell you a little bit about more about that in a minute, and how that's important to this story. But we had a great time at the auction. It was really fun. And so we didn't want the night to end. And so we decided that we were all going to go and meet at a bar in Pioneer Square, which is a neighborhood in Seattle. So we all kind of go our separate ways to drive our cars over to Pioneer Square. And so I'm with my significant other at the time, and Keith goes off with his girlfriend. And so, as I mentioned, my ex had been late. And this was not an unusual thing for him. It was kind of a pattern. And it was just one of many problems that we had in our relationship. This was a really important night for me. I needed him to be there for me, and he just didn't show up like I needed him to. And we had been having some troubles. This wasn't, this was kind of months of things. I had been away on a fellowship for a while. When I came back, the mail was unopened. There was just a lot of things that had built up over time. And I was kind of starting to question this relationship anyways. I was 30. It was that time in my life when I just kind of knew what I wanted and what I didn't. And so this particular night, the being late on this important event just kind of was almost a breaking point for me. And so we get in the car and we end up having this huge argument about why is he late again? And we're getting close to the bar, and I say, just, let me out. I just don't want to be in this conversation anymore. Just pull over, let me out. And he says, fine. I get out of the car. He drives off. So there I am in Pioneer Square, which is not the worst neighborhood, but not the greatest. Definitely not a neighborhood you want to be in a cocktail dress at 11:30 at night by yourself as a woman. So, but I was pretty close to the bar. So I walk over there thinking that all of the group is going to be there, Keith and everyone else. I walk in, no one's there. So now what do I do? And so I'm like, where is everybody? I wasn't going to call my guy to come get me. And so I thought, well, I'll call Keith and see where he's at, because he's supposed to be coming. And so I give him a call. I explained to him what's happened. And he said, well, I had a fight with my girlfriend too, so we're at home. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? I'm kind of here by myself. And he's like, you know what? I'll be there in 10 minutes. So he jumps in the car, he drives down, meets me at the bar. It ends up just being the two of us. We sit and talk. We're talking about our relationships. He wasn't super happy either. And we just kind of learned a lot about each other and about what was important to us. We were on the same page about a lot of things in terms of like being a partner in a relationship and the give and take that comes with that. And I just kind of was sitting there thinking like, this is what I want. And then, so there was an all-night restaurant next door. So we ended up going there after the bar and talking into the wee hours of the morning. Nothing happened. There was nothing scandalous going on, but there was definitely a connection happening. And so the next day, he called and checked on me, which I thought was super sweet and kind of not what the person in my life at that time would have done, probably. And so then the next day at work, we jump in the car, we were heading out for a shoot, and I just turn to him and I say, you know, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? Because now I have this big crush on you, and what do we do? And he said, you know, I feel the same. And so from there, we just ended up spending more time together. There was this bar around the corner from work where we ended up spending a lot of time after work talking and spending time together. And there was a bartender there that kind of watched our relationship evolve. And by Thanksgiving, we had both realized that we had found something in each other that we weren't getting from somewhere else. And I clearly remember there was a day that I was in the car and I was driving and I was listening to the radio, and this song came on. And for the life of me, I can't remember what the song was. I tried to remember, but I can't. But it doesn't really matter. But it was a love song. And I remember thinking in that moment, wow, I actually get what this song is about. Because up until that moment, I just thought it was a fairy tale. I didn't think that really existed, that, you know, why do people write love songs? Like, this is just all a fairy tale. And so that was just a key moment for me of realizing that I had found the person for me and that I needed to give this a shot, and we needed to see where this went. And so by the end of the year, by New Year's, I had moved into my own place. Keith had moved into his own place, and we were able to give this a shot. And we spent a beautiful New Year's together. We had a charcuterie plate. We watched the fireworks over Seattle's Lake Union. It was just the perfect start to our new lives. And to this day, we still have that charcuterie plate every New Year's, because as you might have guessed, Keith is now my husband, and August 26th is our anniversary. So just yesterday, we celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary. I've got right here the little card from him. And tonight we're going to go for a paddleboard. That's going to be our pandemic date for our anniversary. And yeah, so you just never know who you're going to meet at work. And that's the story of how Keith and I met.
Thank you so much for your story, Leave. I think it is both like funny, entertaining, told thoroughly. I want to also know real quick though, like, how often have you told that story to your friends and family?
A few times.
It's great though, because everyone's always like, as I said to Lee when she first told it, we're always like hoping for a meet cute in our regular lives when the rest of us, like, I met my husband on Tinder, which is fine, but it's not much of a story. So
this definitely has a story.
Amen to that. Well, thank you so much for injecting a little love into our workplace stories and sharing it with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to round out our show with our colleague, Robin, who's here to talk to us about how her parents helped shape who she was as a worker. Take it away, Robin.
Thanks so much. How can I follow that act, Leave? That was so wonderful. All right. So it was the spring of 2019. I was working in Soho, overseeing a big creative team at one of the city's rather large photo studios. We were shooting content every day for a bunch of fashion and beauty brands like David Yurman and J. Crew and Target. This was a particularly busy day. Folks were in and out of my office, the usual. There was still a bit of that chill in the air you get in New York in spring, coming through the open window overlooking Varick Street. And I wanted to catch up on my email, so I closed my office door. I kicked off my heels. I downed the last bit of coffee that was now cold. when I got an unexpected gift. It was a text from one of my former students, Jessie Lee. I taught an undergraduate class at Hunter College for several years called Women in the Media. You know that feeling, I should say, where you never know if what you're doing is making a difference. Well, I got to find out that day. Think for a moment about the people who influenced, your life for the better. The ones we're lucky enough to call mentors. For me, it started with my parents. I was raised in a very creative home. My parents met in art school in Boston. My dad worked for Polaroid for 34 years in Cambridge. My mom worked too, but made every one of my Halloween costumes and still did drawings when she found the time. So growing up, I was surrounded with photography, art, film, books, cool clothes, and even cooler music. My parents, Nath and Jim, encouraged my independence from the time I was a young girl. I carried this free thinking and fearlessness with me throughout my life, into my work as a professor, a writer, and a creative director, and creative leader today. And most importantly, as a mentor. My mom likes to tell the story of walking me to kindergarten on my first day, holding my hand. And we got to the bottom of the hill with my little red schoolhouse, perched atop. I let go of her hand and I said, "Okay, mommy, I can go from here," and marched off, to that first day of school. My dad kept every single thing I wrote until his death in 2014 and was my biggest fan. Because my parents always believed in me, I've been empowered in my choices, which have enabled me to mentor, to pay it forward. When I decided to leave academia, they supported me in my decision to pursue a more creative career. In 2002, I landed my first full-time gig in advertising as a copywriter. I'd been publishing for several years for all kinds of magazines, from Vanity Fair to Dwell, Surface, Black Book, writing on travel, beauty, and fashion. So copywriting wasn't such a huge leap, but it was a bold one to go from teaching and cobbling together part-time jobs to a career in advertising. I had a strong female role model at that first agency, but she wasn't exactly perfect. She was tough and frankly yelled a lot. But I learned from her what I should and shouldn't do in a leadership position. I left the browbeating and shouting behind, and as I advanced in my career, I adopted a leadership style that supports talent through mentoring. Which brings me to Jessie Lee. She sat front row in my class in the big lecture hall, front and center. She was shy and super smart, but struggling with her confidence. I took her under my wing, encouraging her participation and her writing. I do remember giving her an A. So I've seen in her social feeds how much she's changed over the years, from that shy, awkward young woman in my classroom. But back then I didn't realize what impact, I might have had on her. But I always believed in her, like my mom and dad believed in me. So over the years, I've seen Emily step up as a junior designer on my team on Olay at Saatchi to come up with the winning idea for a Mother's Day spot when I gave her that chance. I advocated for Lexi, a producer who wanted to be an art director, who is now soaring in that profession. Bianca, a designer stuck in a dead-end job, who's now pursuing her real passion as an illustrator. And even the two Matts, who each left indelible impressions on me as I tried to mentor them. I consciously choose to mentor, to intentionally support those coming up the ladder, especially young women in the often brutal and terribly unequal world of advertising. Like I stood on her shoulders, my mom's love poured into me, and I poured into them. So a few things you can do to mentor, is to commit to a regular schedule, stick to it, check in every few weeks or every week if you can, on the phone or in person, not just texts. Create 2 to 3 reasonable goals to work towards together. Be mindful of your time, but open your heart. Do a lot of listening. The unsung work of being a mentor is subtle. You don't do it for money or material gain, but it's spiritual and emotional. It's that feeling you get when you see people you've supported flourish, like Jessie and Emily and the two Matts. I met up with Jessie Lee the same day that she had texted me in the office. She was only in town for one night on business, up from Dallas, and asked if she could come by. When I went to meet her in reception, we both couldn't stop grinning and hugged really hard. It was great to see her again in person. She told me she was recently interviewed for a big industry publication, and the reporter asked her who were the top 5 women that had had the most influence on her and her success. Jessie Lee told me that she told the reporter that I was one of them. Wow. It's not often that we get to hear how we've impacted someone as a mentor, but I got that gift. In that moment with Jessie Lee, I was so pleasantly surprised and humbled. Seeing her again reaffirmed for me that when we help others rise, it lifts us all up. Just like my mom and dad raised me to be fearless and filled with hope for a more just and equitable world. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for modeling responsible behavior, honoring your mom and dad, and calling for like a more just and equitable workforce. You really like, ladies and gentlemen, that's how a pro does it. That was a lot packed into like, what, 6 minutes or less? I also want to thank you, Robin, for explicitly calling out this is what mentors do, because I know so many of us have it in our hearts to probably help people, but other than like being encouraging in a meeting, it's not always really clear to people. Like, what does the work really look like? Also, if any of you guys are aspiring mentors and you want Robin to mentor you on that, no, I'm kidding. But
definitely, I'm here.
Thank you so much for your story.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a little bit of a short show, and I'm going to tell you guys a tiny story from me about meeting somebody at work, because we founded Storytellers Project and the Storytellers Brand Studio at USA Today because we know that stories are like the key to life, and I love telling them. So to close out our show of 4 women telling stories about friendships, relationships, and workplace moments that changed their lives, here's a little one from me to you. When I first moved to Phoenix, when I graduated from college, I was incredibly alone. I was like the loneliest, saddest kid you could possibly imagine. I'd grown up with a twin sister and a lot of friends. In fact, like a bunch of best friends. And then I went to college and I lived in a house with there were 6 of us, a dog, a cat, and a snake. So when I moved to Phoenix and I did not know anybody, I was like not well prepared to be alone. And my roommate was busy, and all the other interns either didn't get offered jobs or had boyfriends. So I wasn't really sure how to fill all these hours of my day. And I subscribed to the New Yorker, and I remember reading all of the agate type at the front. That's how lonely I was, you guys. It was I read it cover to cover, even the tiny type at the front. I also vividly remember going to the grocery store once, and I'd always gone grocery shopping with my twin sister, because we lived together in college, and she would always be the one to kind of calculate how much money we had on our account, what could we afford to buy. And I was standing in the dairy aisle, trying to figure out if I could afford fancy cheese, but I didn't know how to do that without my sister. And I had a panic attack, and I left the grocery store without cheese, which there is almost nothing sadder than that thought. Kidding, but I'm not kidding. How pathetic. And I did some other things that were really really to me as a single person in the world alone. I went to the movies by myself, and now I'm oh my God, why would you ever go with anybody? But well, now we don't go to the movies as much. But at the time, I felt really awkward. Everybody was looking at me look at this sad girl going to the movies alone. And so it was with this kind of desperate sense of abject loneliness that I agreed to take a job reporting on a ladies' night on the Thursday night. It is 100% true that I actually thought, well, now I'll have plans on a Thursday night, work. But I don't know, that's what loneliness is like. Maybe some of you are feeling that right now with coronavirus. Maybe it's harder to be in touch with your friends. But either way, I agreed to take this assignment to write about a new ladies' night in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it was just a little puff piece for the paper, send a photographer, something fun and cute for the things to do section of the paper, the kind of thing you literally give the new hire to do. And I went, and there was this woman in the back of the room, and she had short red hair, and she was in this sort of very artsy outfit. And she had incredibly pale skin, colored in freckles. And I was immediately struck by she was very take control. She came up to me and she shook my hand, and she was you must be the lady from the paper. Well, come right this way. And she ushers me into the back room, and she puts her arm around me, and she shows me all the decorations and everything they had done to decorate the back room at this bar to be a fun, cool place for girls, which seemed to be all these pillows and a lot of pink, and the pillows were in the shape of lips, and there were free pink drinks. I mean, it was pretty what you'd expect, but this was also 2002, so it was still everything was new then. It was early, simple times. Like the economy was still like sort of blossoming. And so Jen took me to the back room. I didn't know her name was Jen yet, but she was like, here's where all this cool stuff is happening. And she set me up with the guy from the bar who was like running the night, and I got my quotes. And of course I didn't drink because you can't drink while you work, but she said, like hang out, meet all the other girls when they show up, and you can do the story. And I did, and it was fun, and there was music, and the girls got free drinks, and it was a ladies' night, guys. It's not rocket science. But at the end of the night, she said, hey, you have to come back next week when we do this again, but like, you won't be working, so you can like drink and have fun, and like, I'll be here too. And I swear to God, you guys, I was like, oh my God, I would have plans two Thursdays. Excuse me, I just spit. It's okay, I'm in my own house. I was like, oh my God, I'd have plans 2 Thursdays in a row. And like, this girl wants to hang out with me, and this would be great. And I was like, okay, see you next week. And I was really excited. And I wrote the story, it published, I moved on with my life, and I showed up the next week. But I was so self-conscious because, again, I was like just so not used to going anywhere alone, like never alone. And now I had to go everywhere alone. So I like picked out what I thought was a cool outfit. Don't worry about it. It's hard to describe. I was like coming from Indiana, and now I'm living in Scottsdale. I had none of the right clothes. It was like a total thing. But I put on what I did my best outfit, and I went out, and Jen was there again. And she was like, oh my God, you came. And I was like, oh my God, do you want to stand near each other? Because I literally know no one here. And she was so nice to me, and she paid attention to me, and she was like, actually super smart, interesting girl. She was the kind of girl who's like very pretty and cool, but like also had like she'd done speech and debate her whole life. And just my kind of girl, as it turns out. And we got to know each other that evening, and we kept hanging out. And shortly, like a couple weeks later, she was like legit one of the few people I knew in the city. I wrote her a note, and I took her to lunch. And the note said, I really want to be your friend. Like, I hope we can be friends, because like I didn't need to write about her anymore. As a publicist, there wasn't anything else that she was pitching. And she looked at the note, which I think she thought was really weird, but I wrote it on very fancy stationery from Crane's Stationery. So it was like the fanciest stationery in the whole world. And she was so touched. And of course she was like, of course we'll be friends. Like, that would be fabulous. And my story ends happily because she ended up knowing like everyone in the city. She was a totally connected person and changed my entire life in Arizona. She led me to all of my favorite best friends. I was at her wedding. She was at my wedding. We are still friends today, like husbands and kids later, and like a million friends. And that was almost 20 years ago. And so I know journalism can make a lot of people like bitter and jaded and weird. But for me, it gave me like the biggest friendships I'll ever have in my life. So thanks for watching our show. That's my little story. I'd like to bring up all of our storytellers real quick so that you can thank them all again. Robin, Leave, Bernice. We'd also like to thank Jordan for facilitating this. Thank you so much on behalf of all of us to you at Brand Storytelling. Awesome. And thank you behind the scenes to Michael and Evan from the Storytellers Project and Storytellers Brand Studio team. They've been running point on these shows, and they wouldn't have happened without you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully we'll see you soon. I know Jordan said Brand Storytelling is always working on ways to keep us connected, even though, again, it seems unlikely we'll be gathering this winter physically together. If you like Storyteller Project or what we're doing here, you can find us over at USA Today. We're working on shows for the rest of the year, almost every single Thursday night for the rest of the year, most of them, including partnerships with NASA, with No Kid Hungry, and all kinds of cool organizations. So stay in touch with us. Have a great night.